When in reality, what you're doing is you're making science the judge as to whether the Quran is correct or not. You see people giving da'wah. He said, I can prove to you that Islam is true because Allah made the mountains as pegs. And that's why if you see in some of the books about scientific miracles in the Quran, it's like, fill your bookshelf.
من يريد الله به خيرا يفقهه في الدين.
This is something out of interest. There's an interesting topic here. Al-i'jaz al-ilmi fil Quran. Scientific miracles in the Quran. It's interesting because there is a lot of very unreliable tafsir mixed with very selective choices of science and theories, and it leads to things that are not really compatible with the tafsir of the Quran. So a lot of times you'll find what people call scientific miracles are based on a tafsir that no one from the Salaf ever said. And they're based on things that are not even compatible with the Arabic language sometimes. They're actually based on modern Arabic rather than classical Arabic, for example. Like وَالسَّمَاءِ وَالطَّارِقِ being the flashing stars and things like that. The reality is that there's a lot of exaggeration. But the reality is that there is i'jazun ilmiyyun fil Quran. There are scientific miracles in the Quran. What we need to do to properly appreciate scientific miracles in the Quran are 2 or 3 things. The first thing is to realize that the Quran is not a book of science. And it wasn't revealed to teach you physics and biology and chemistry. It was revealed to guide you from the darkness into the light. However, Allah mentions out of His infinite knowledge things which are ayat min ayatillah, like the mountains as pegs. The mountains as pegs which hold the earth firm is something which is an ayah min ayatillah al-kawniyah, a sign from Allah's signs on this earth that should lead you to worship Him alone and dedicate yourself in worship to Him and believe in His creation and the resurrection. And that's why Allah mentions it to the mushrikeen who don't believe in the resurrection. It's a sign from the signs of Allah. What is also very important is that whenever we mention a scientific miracle, we make sure that it is grounded in an established tafsir. That means that, no doubt the science can be new. The science could have been discovered last week. But the tafsir, the meaning of the ayah, is something that is grounded and compatible with what the Prophet ﷺ taught and the Sahaba taught. Not something which is invented or made up to match the science. And ultimately what we have to do is make sure we are not changing the Quran to match science, but we appreciate when Allah tells us something that we can see the truth of it in the universe. وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. In your own selves there are so many signs. This is a balanced view when it comes to scientific miracles. Otherwise you will see people making videos about scientific miracles. It's not even the correct Arabic language. And then they choose the science which is matching this tafsir that they made up. And then they try to show it. And then they try to tell people that this is the reason you should accept Islam. When in reality, what you're doing is you're making science the judge as to whether the Quran is correct or not. You've gone the wrong way around. The Quran is the judge as to whether science is correct. Science is not the judge as to whether the Quran is correct. And that's what happens. You see people giving da'wah. He said, I can prove to you that Islam is true because Allah made the mountains as pegs. That's problematic in da'wah. Because ultimately what you need to reach the person with is a tawheed, the oneness of Allah. The fact that there's no one deserving of worship but Him. Now if the person said, look at the signs of Allah, Look at the fact that Allah made the mountains as pegs. Look at the fact that Allah made the earth flat for you. And then appreciate the worship of your Lord, there's no problem. But when a person is taking certain things and making it the only part of their da'wah is just like a physics, biology textbook. The problem is, the minute a scientist from the kuffar, from the atheists, comes along and says, that's not correct, I've got a different theory, then your da'wah just falls apart and the people leave. Because you didn't attach them to Allah, you attached them to science. And this happened, I think many of you have seen the writings and pamphlets and leaflets that were produced about embryology in the Quran. And it's a true miracle. And Allah Azza wa Jal explains the development of the fetus in the womb from a single drop until a baby that is born in immense detail. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with the tafsir. What happened? Some people came along and they made this the core of their da'wah. One scientist, embryologist or whatever, some biologist in North America, turned up one day and said, the Quran is wrong. I'm an expert, we have cameras and we have everything, 3D scans and everything. And the Quran says the order of the bones and the flesh is wrong. I can show you on the scan. Okay, all of us, let's leave Islam today. What do you think? The problem is not the tafsir, not even the miracle. The problem is that they made this their da'wah. They made science their da'wah. And so it took, this man is lying, by the way. But what they did is, they allowed themselves to be vulnerable to this person because they made science the judge of the Quran. So when a scientist came and said, the Quran is wrong, they all stood like with open mouths and, they don't know what to do. But if they said, no, you are wrong, whatever scan you have, because Allah told you and Allah Azza wa Jal told you what is true. So either the tafsir you've taken is wrong, and either that you've misunderstood the tafsir, or either your understanding of the child's development is wrong because Allah spoke the truth. But what happened was they built their da'wah upon science because they don't think it's appropriate to talk to people about theology. And this we see a lot in da'wah. Ikhwani, I see a lot. People out on the street, they don't want to engage people by talking about Allah and the oneness of Allah and praying and worshipping Allah. They want something, scientific and logical and like the mutakallimin, like the people of philosophy and rhetoric. And really they're going back to the same methodology of Al-Jahm ibn Safwan. When Al-Jahm ibn Safwan said, it's not good enough to prove Allah exists from the Quran. You have to prove that He exists without the Quran. And all of the misguidance and the evil that came from that came because they didn't think it was enough to prove that Allah exists from the Quran. They want to say, I have to be able to show you from outside of the Quran. So this is, I think it's an important topic because the mountains as pegs is a genuine scientific fact. And if used properly, it could be a reason for a person to look into Islam. But don't attach your da'wah to science. Bring it, show it to someone, but what you're inviting someone to is not science, because science you can get in university. Science, I can get it without changing my religion. I want something that's going to change my dunya and my akhirah, and that is La ilaha illallah. And that's what we call the people to. قل هذه سبيلي أدعو إلى الله على بصيرة أنا ومن اتبعني وسبحان الله وما أنا من المشركين. That's the da'wah of the Prophet ﷺ. La ilaha illallah, calling the people to Allah. I'm not saying don't use it, but if you use it, make sure your tafsir is solid. Make sure that you're not making science the judge of Islam. But show people, look at the miracles here, look at the beauty of the Quran, look at not only does the Quran give you in the most beautiful language and the most beautiful meanings and the most beautiful instructions and spirituality, but it also gives you facts that open your eyes to the oneness of Allah. That's the purpose of it. It's not to teach you physics. You can learn about the depth of the mountains under the earth from a physics textbook. You can go study the depths of the mountains and geology and geography and all of that. You can study all that. But it's there to show you that Allah deserves to be worshipped. And that's how we should use it. And be very careful about bringing in scientific miracles that are not based in reliable tafsir. And we're going to come to some of them in Juz Amma and highlight the problems with them. And that's why if you see in some of the books about scientific miracles in the Quran, it's like, fill your bookshelf. And in reality, a lot of it doesn't stand up to scrutiny. We don't need to convince people through science. We need to convince people through calling out to the fitrah, to the intellect which tells you that there is a God that deserves to be worshipped, and by showing them the miracles of Allah, the signs of Allah Azza wa Jal in the Quran and the signs of Allah in His creation. And if you do that and then bring them to La ilaha illallah, you won't have a problem, inshaAllah ta'ala. I just mention it because it's a problem that doesn't go away in da'wah. And it's based, like we said, upon the ideas that were founded by the likes of Al-Jahm ibn Safwan, that it's not good enough to call a person to Allah with the Quran. Rather, you have to bring something external. Then what is the point of the Quran? The Quran is Allah's proof that He sent down. So you don't need to go anything external to it. Second, there's no doubt that Allah Azza wa Jal tells us things about this universe, min ayatillahi al-kawniyah, from the signs of Allah in this universe, of the mountains.